Hi, I'm Lynn Morgan, your slipper-shod pastor, but not in slippers at all today. In my good shoes and in my working clothes, because I'm getting ready to record a Sunday service here in just a little bit. In my devotions this week, I've been reading the book of Joshua, which is, of course, an exciting and eventful book, but it's also a troubling book because there's lots of stories in there, starting with the fall of Jericho, about the absolute preference God has for the people of Israel and the absolute disdain God seems to have for the Canaanites who are already living in the land that God has promised to Israel. Scattered in among the battles and the prohibitions against taking any of the loot in the battle, there are also important prohibitions that are issued to the Israelites against mixing with the Canaanites, marrying with them, having commerce with them, accepting them as kind of co-equals in their land together. The religious nature of that is pretty clear. God instructs the Israelites to live distinctly, to live according to the law that God has revealed to them, to not engage in the worship of idols, and not to water down or to mix together their religious traditions with those of the Canaanites. And so they are called to live apart and separately, to be a distinct people. Well, when I was growing up, I grew up in a very conservative evangelical branch of Methodism, and I was instructed always to be different, to be separate, to avoid certain kinds of behavior, prudential morality. I don't smoke, drink, or chew, or date girls who do, that kind of prudential morality that made you different, made you stand out, made you distinct, as though somehow those were really the marks of Christianity. I'm not here to argue with whether following that prudential morality is good or bad or indifferent. But rather, I think it's important for us in this day and age to ask, well, what is it that makes Christians distinct? How do we stand out in a culture that is diverse and is often unconcerned with things that are spiritual and deeper than just material pleasure and success? What makes us stand out? And today, I would say, at this moment in our history, at this moment in our country, one of the ways that we could stand out best is by refusing to divide up into groups, by refusing to say we're the righteous ones and the rest of you are just all going to hell in a handbasket, to refuse to say that we have all the truth and you have none of it, whether that's because of our religious identity or our political identity or our cultural identity or our racial identity. To absolutely refuse to say we're the right ones and you're the wrong ones. If we really, as the people of God, made it our business to avoid that way of expressing ourselves and, more importantly, that way of thinking about ourselves as better than, as other than, well, I'll tell you, I think then we really would stand out, not as better than everybody else, but as an attractive refuge in a world where people are divided and fearful and hating of one another. If we were open and humble and accepting of each other, what a vision of God's love we could be in the world. Let it be so.